Anyway, welcome to Downunder Politics. Tonight we're going to attempt to respectfully discuss a potentially very sensitive issue, the British monarchy, because apparently some of the richest and most powerful people in the world need to have their feelings taken care of. But in all seriousness, with the death of the Queen, we do appreciate that a lot of people are in mourning at the moment, so we are going to attempt to go about this as respectfully as possible and stick to the facts of the issue and avoid making any emotional slurs and guillotine jokes. As fun as guillotine jokes are. So, yeah, without further ado, we've got myself, David, and Mitchell here tonight, and Mitchell is eating a big, fat, hungry Jack's burger, which is perfectly acceptable. So, I feel like I don't really need to say what my position on the monarchy is, as you can probably guess at this point. So, David, Mitchell, who would like to express how they feel about the British monarchy first? Try to keep it brief.
I'll go, seeing as Mitch looks like he's enjoying a bite of his burger. I like it. Talking about before we went live, I can't particularly explain why, but I like it. I feel like it's a tradition that I'm typically not traditional, but I respect it, and I find it kind of fascinating to review. Everyone kind of sometimes loves hearing about their family history, and that's just another piece of history that's fascinating to me. And I also agree with the comments that I believe Jordan Peterson has said in the past and does recently is that having a monarch in a democratic society creates a person that the prime minister or president, wherever you are, has to respect and look up to, like everyone else in a way. In America, obviously, they do not have a monarchy, and I think Jordan Peterson has said, could you imagine if Donald Trump had to walk up to someone and that someone is going to say, so how are you going running my country? And it's kind of a way to a way to intimidate the prime minister or the leader into making sure they're doing a good job, and they're not just abusing the power. They've kind of got someone above them, and I like that idea. I like the idea of someone being above the leader of the country as well.
I have some thoughts on that, so we will definitely stick a pin in that and get to that at some point. But Mitch, would you like to share with all of the lovely people your position on the British monarchy?
Yeah, quite frankly, I don't think it goes far enough. I think I'm a big believer in absolute monarchy. In the spirit of the enlightened despots of the late Enlightenment time, your role as a monarch, as a benevolent despot, should be to protect the rights and freedoms of the people in society, and not have those rights and freedoms subject to the changing whims of democracy.
I have some thoughts on that as well.
You asked for a controversial opinion, I'd give you one.
Look, this is going to be a fun episode tonight. I feel mildly outnumbered, but that's just fine. We will, just go where the facts lead, I suppose. So obviously, I'm not a fan of monarchies. Hereditary rule in general, not a fan of. Mainly because I don't find it as a really great way of picking leaders. I mean, the circumstance of your birth don't make you a great leader just because you fell out of a particular vagina.
See, that's where I don't think a monarch technically is a leader as such.
Well, they are. They are the head of state.
but that's why we're in a democratic system, and typically that's what I agree. It's a democratic monarchy. You elect the leader of the country. The monarchy is there as it's almost like a symbol of, I don't know what of, I can't think of a word right now, but it stands as an ideal or something above the leader to hold the leader to account.
But to account to what extent?
What do you mean?
Well, you have one person that has the power to sack the person that's actually the functional leader of the country. So do you really want to put that much power in the hands of a single person based on no other fact than they were born from a particular person?
They're not going.
Oh, you go.
No, they're not going to exercise that power very often.
No, because
they would fall out of favor very quickly.
Not necessarily.
Because it's a democratic society, that abusing that power, I think, would make them very unpopular.
It would be exercising it.
Let's look at the one time it has actually happened in Australia. It hasn't at all happened in Britain, but it has happened in Australia. And that is because the government at the time, the Whitlam government, blatantly went outside of the remit, the purview of their government. They went and sought illegal loans. They didn't go through Parliament in order to get the money they needed. As a result of that, the opposition said, well, that is absolutely wrong what you did, and we're not going to give you supply because you didn't go through the lawful and constitutional ways of ensuring that the Australian government has money to function by. And there was no effort made at actually trying to get all of that to work, negotiation, consensus, compromise. And this went on for nearly a year before the Governor-General just said, look, this is ridiculous. This isn't working. We're going to sack the government, appoint the opposition as caretaker. Caretaker doesn't give you any power. It just means that you have to get your supply bills through, and then basically went to a double dissolution election, which the Liberal Party won handily. So John Kerr, acting in his responsibility as a representative of the Queen, actually did what the Australian people expected and wanted to counterbalance a government that was simply dead in the water.
See, and that's fine. There should be a mechanism in place for that sort of thing for a democracy to work properly. My argument is, why does that mechanism, what advantage of going through circumstances of a particular individual's birth, what advantages is that going to give to carrying out such a mechanism? And on top of that, because you're giving all of that power to one person, the choice to exercise that power is then at the whim of that one particular individual. And if you have one individual, as we all appreciate, every person has their own political leanings. What if in that situation it was the other way round, and it was a right-wing government, or more right-wing government, that was in power, and the Governor-General, because they agreed more with their political leanings, was more hesitant in exercising that power?
Well, John, are you I guess getting at the issue of power by birth versus election?
Well, power by birth
you would rather
any other method.
The Queen or the King or whoever the monarch was, you'd rather them be elected.
Well, they wouldn't be a king or queen really at that
point. I know, but
I know what you mean.
That's your issue. Your issue is with the fact that they're not elected.
Of the issue. It's not that they're not elected. It's that the sole criteria for selection is the circumstances of their birth.
See, for me, I think that's good. I think, and you could argue it from a constitutional monarchy perspective. That is, well, if they are born into it, there's no other way that anybody else can get access to that top job, that place of ultimate power, that representing the nation. Therefore, greedy, grasping, ambitious politicians who care about no one but themselves do not have a chance at this job that is supposed to represent the best of a country. And if you argue from an absolute monarchy perspective, I'd actually suggest that the circumstance of birth actually makes them better leaders. It can make them better leaders, because if you've got a wise king with good advisors, because no monarch rules alone, no matter how absolute their
No
power.
man rules alone.
They still have advisors, all of that sort of thing. But you think about it: if they're in a position of privilege, their kids are going to be the best educated. They're going to have all advantages available to them. They're going to have all the information available to them in order to make decent decisions. And
Matthew's law.
Say again, sorry.
Matthew's law. Privilege
You'll have to
begets
explain
privilege.
that. Yes, exactly so. Privilege begets privilege. And in this case, privilege is actually a good thing. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to get me absolutely pilloried. I wouldn't trust an Australian head of state as far as I could throw him. I don't think Australia has what it takes for an Australian to take leadership into his own hand or her own hands.
So I guess I was going to go somewhere else with that, but you raise an interesting point that I would like you to expand on. Why do you think that a British person would be able to
speak better to the Australian situation? Because they've got that detached view. Everyone who is raised in Australia has a view of how they think the country should be. You've got people who come out from a working class background, and I sympathise more with that than I do with the upper class background. I grew up lower middle class, divorced parents. My dad used to live in a garage for a couple of years, so I'm familiar with that. But that doesn't necessarily give us an appreciation of what business needs to run, for example. And similarly, you get people who come from a place of privilege, and their idea of how do you buy a house? Oh, just get a job that pays good, to quote Joe Hockey. Like, that is hopelessly out of touch. And for both of those things, they're not going to be able to impartially interact with the issues that are happening in Australia, because they're always going to look at it through their experiences as an Australian.
So just going back to my point,
in a particular milieu.
Why does that mean that a foreign national would fill that role better?
Because then they can look at all the information they have access to that information, and they can take in different perspectives. I'm not saying that they're going to be born with that experience, but they're able to take the experiences of others without being coloured by a view of what it means, what it should mean to be an Australian.
But
they're not going to have a bias.
They still will see it through the lens of the privilege they've been born into.
Definitely. But they're also responsible to the working class in the way that the privileged aren't. Because the privileged have economic power over the working class. We all agree on that.
Yes.
But the working class have power over the monarchy in our current constitutional model, in that if the monarch does something the working class don't like, they have numbers on their side. They can force a referendum and depose the monarchy. One false step will lose you power forever.
Except not really, because they also what's the word I'm looking for? The bulk of the media, which, let's be very blunt, mainstream media in most developed democracies around the world is basically just propaganda.
I completely agree with that. Yeah.
And they have a vested interest in keeping the status quo. So they're going, if that issue does come up, and with the death of the Queen, it's quite possible that that issue may come up in the near future. I would be expecting that you will see a lot of propaganda in favour of keeping the monarchy come up, which is very quickly going to destroy the power of the proletariat to overthrow the monarchy via a referendum.
So the monarchy make good money, so that they draw a crowd.
Yeah, and
It's a good business model going into economics, but
yeah, what's the best way to get an article that has a whole lot of ad revenue on it? Make it about the Queen. Everyone's going to eat
Exactly.
the house. No, I definitely see what you mean, but for me, if we also understand that the monarchy is if the media is controlled by big business vested interests who want to have more power in Australia.
It's not so much. I should probably clarify that point. It's not that I'm saying that they're controlled by. It's that their interests, the overwhelming majority of the time, align very, very closely.
I would actually go further, and I would say that media in Australia is controlled by big business interests.
In Australia specifically, yes, but I was talking much broader than that in my statement.
Okay, yeah, I understand what you mean.
But I'm still not seeing why having an unelected person that has the ability to toss the government out has any advantage of them being a foreign national, or why it needs to be one person, why they need to be unelected. Yeah, David.
I agree with what Mitch said in that by them being unelected, it does prevent someone who's very ambitious and egotistical about power and just wants the power of getting to that position. They just can't get there. They're ruled out. And I think the fact that it goes by birth, those children are raised knowing that one day they are going to have to take that role over. And I don't know about most people. Some people often think, oh, I'd love to be, born into a royal family or whatever, but it's probably a very shitty kind of controlling life.
Most likely.
It's literally your job all of your life, and you don't even get a choice in what you wanted to do for your career. You could fucking hate being public speaking and being on camera, but too bad, too sad. Guess what? You were born into it. That's your job. It would suck for probably most of it, and it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to be critiqued by the media. But I think what happens, because monarchs, they are on a pedestal, and they get put on that pedestal, and that means the public can criticize them quite easily. But I don't think politicians get that same criticism or treated the same way. Everyone hates politicians, and they get criticized all the time, and nothing happens.
Well, I mean, off of that point, if a politician goes and starts dunking on the monarchy, they're going to have the media, whose interests very closely align with the monarchy and that keeping the status quo. The media's going to jump on them and pound the crap out of them.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, Malcolm Turnbull's been a Republican for quite a while. Anthony Albanese's been a Republican for quite a while. That hasn't really been questioned. The only people who've been dunked on are the people who are saying, while the Queen's body is still warm, oh, let's get rid of the monarchy now. Like, it's not the time to have that discussion, but it will be after the period of mourning has passed.
Oh, I agree with you on that. I mean, look, there's no one in this chat that dislikes the monarchy more than I do. And I fully agree. Now's not the time to be discussing removing the monarchy. Personally, in my opinion, it was like 100 years ago, but that's not the point.
I reckon give it a month or so, and we'll be having a discussion on the monarchy in the public.
One of the key reasons I would rather not get rid of the monarchy here in Australia is, I feel like, despite we would obviously not change our form of government, we would still keep the same system as we have currently with the House of Representatives and the Senate. I feel like it would drive us to be a bit more similar to America, and we would probably start to adopt more American practices, and I do not like that idea at all.
This is Australia.
I prefer the British model personally. I do not want to replicate America.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you
that
on
will
that.
Happen.
Because that's already happening.
It is already happening. Yes. Imagine how much worse it's going to get if we become a republic. I don't know the details because I haven't actually research into it, but I
It's
know
the-
the basic that being a republic, and Mitch, if you know this, I feel like you might. Does it give more power to the states?
Not necessarily.
Depends on how you
States,
structure it.
states versus federal is a thing that Australia had decided a long time ago. Federal government would have more power than the states. In America, it's more the states simply because of culture.
I mean, if you were to convert, and we'll get right back on topic in a second.
This is on topic.
Getting a little bit off, but if we were to convert Australia from a constitutional monarchy to a republic, I don't really see that much changing. I mean, there's no reason we couldn't keep there's no reason we have to implement it in the same way it's implemented in the US. We don't need to have a president technically. We could just keep our two houses of parliament federally, the same houses.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we would.
We just no longer have the Queen.
And that's
king,
the model
as it
that
is
Jeffrey Robertson QC actually proposed in an article in the paper either yesterday or today. Just get rid of the Queen, the Governor General, that whole role, and just have the head of state be the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And I disagree with that because Scott Morrison.
Good point.
Okay, so let's just go into some alternate history for a moment here then. Let's say hypothetically, sometime pre-ScoMo becoming PM, we had done exactly that. We'd kept everything basically the same, just turfed out the Queen and the Governor General. What are you saying would have changed?
Scott Morrison would have been the head of state, unaccountable, undismissible, except by his own party.
Basically unaccountable and undismissible except by his own party. And on top of that, somehow he managed to make himself minister for everything.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, at least there was someone above him who could have shut that down if that got common knowledge, and if if the government was unworkable. Whereas if that person didn't exist and things got worse, then nothing could have stopped him.
Two things. First, do you really think the Governor General didn't know? And two, even if he didn't know and he then found out, do you think he actually would have enacted that power if it had become public knowledge?
I think it would be more.
He did know, by the way. He's the one that went and was like, "Yep, you can do this."
Yeah, see, that is something I disagree with. I think the Governor General should have told him to shut that down.
See, and that's where I think putting that much power in the hands of one person is a bad idea.
But
taking that person away just puts that in the hands of one person. It just moves it to the Prime Minister instead.
Yeah.
Well, you could set
How's
it up
it any
as
different?
you have a selection of just randomly selected citizens that are selected every year, and it just rotates through, and no one except these particular individuals know, which means you don't have to worry about anyone trying to bribe and corrupt them.
You know what? It's not a terrible idea. Hilarious.
Yeah, I'm not in principle opposed to that.
I mean, it seems like a better way of doing it, is you don't have to. I mean, the Governor General knew that ScoMo was doing these things, and not only did he not turf ScoMo out, but he approved of them.
I mean, and that actually goes back to, like, honestly, I think that I don't know if that sort of thing could have happened in Britain if the Queen.
But that's where.
There you go.
That's where I think the monarchy is actually held to more account by the public than politicians can be, because that came out, and the public obviously have reacted quite, scathingly and slammed ScoMo and been like, "Why would you do this?" And that comes out that the Governor General knew, and then the public are like, "What the fuck? Why did you do this?" And then suddenly now it's on the Queen or the King or the monarchy to be like, "Hey, why is your guy not doing this?" And then, you know what I mean? Like, if it gets really, really bad, the monarchy's they hate controversy. They don't want to be involved. They're going to be like, in the background, they're going to be like, "What the fuck's going on?" if something like that is happening, it needs to be called out. I feel like the monarchy hates controversy so much that anything that pisses off the public, and it's probably a good thing that, we're at this point where it's not required, because it makes them more sensitive to keeping the government to account.
I'm actually going to do a hot take.
Oh,
This is actually why I don't like the institution of the Governor-General. I think the Queen should personally be involved in Australian politics and not hand it off, because this bad decision reflected on the Governor-General, right? But if the Queen was involved, oh yeah, sure.
I'll just add, not hand it off to the Governor-General. I actually think it'd be really cool if they actually handed it off to someone related.
Sorry, say again. Someone
related.
Yeah, like I don't know, get Prince Harry to do it or something.
Yeah, that I think would be cool and make sense in a way.
And with that, like, this should reflect poorly on the Queen, that the Governor-General let something like this happen. But it doesn't. It reflects on the Governor-General, who is appointed on the advice of Australian politicians. And that's why I don't like the Governor-General, because he's still in some way beholden to, do you remember Quentin Bryce, Governor-General? Her daughter actually married Bill Shorten.
Oh, lovely. I didn't know that, actually.
This is why I think the Governor-General should, as David says, relatives of them, like part of the royal family, or they should be outsiders. Like we used to have English Governor-Generals, and we started appointing Australians. Like that was such a good idea.
Just have actual generals from the British military do it.
Yeah, it's quiet.
Yeah,
what could go wrong? But look,
I reckon it'd be really cool if they did something like you said, like like Prince Harry got assigned to Australia as the Governor-General for X amount of years, and they don't have to. Wouldn't have to be indefinite. It might be like 4 or 5 years, like a term of politics, 3 years, is it? And then rotate it. It's like, all right, that family member Prince did it. Rotate. Now this family member has to go, and they've got what? Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and India.
And let's be honest, pre-Meghan Markle, Prince Harry was such a lad, and the Australians would have loved him.
But see, I mean, it comes back to the point that I've kind of been making the whole time. You're putting all of that power in the hands of one person, and all it takes is a smooth-talking prime minister with ambitions, and their entire function of holding the government to account goes completely out the window.
Yeah, but I responded to that before when I said you take away the Governor-General or whatever, and it's that one person becomes the prime minister.
Well, that's where you'd implement an alternate system.
A committee.
Like a committee, an anonymous committee.
To watch what the prime minister's doing.
Yes. Multiple people that you don't know that they're doing that role are much harder to corrupt.
I feel like they could become I feel like they would become corrupt, or could.
Or apathetic. Have you ever known the average Australian to care about politics?
Very true.
I'm not opposed to the idea in principle. I think it's actually a good idea that citizens without privilege or ambition are involved in Parliament, in politics. I think that's actually important. We should do it. See, if I was Grand Duke of Australia, or if I was King of Australia and then got Charles elected, and I told him, well, you can't have two kings of the same rank, therefore he has to have a higher rank, so he can be emperor, and therefore we've got an emperor now.
We're going to call him the God Emperor.
But yeah, if that was me, what was the question again? Oh yeah, no, getting regular people involved in politics. I'd actually put together a citizens' council to advise me based on that.
Isn't that something that used to happen like centuries ago, where kings would have they were like the court. They had the open, I don't know what they called it, but it's where anyone without privilege and that could come before the king and say, hey, I had, Jono here stole 3 of my sheep and didn't pay me. And then, I can't remember what it was called. And the king, they'd listen to the problems of the people.
Well, that was where the law courts came from. The law courts actually came from the fact that the king would actually be the one to whom people appealed.
Fair enough.
Like that sounds like very similar to what you were just describing, of you would go and listen to people.
I think we're going to have to wrap up now.
We're having fun.
We were having fun. Unfortunately, a particular child of mine has decided to not have fun. So we're gonna have to wrap up. We will resume this though, and that's when we can go and talk about overthrowing the monarchy. That sounds like fun after the mourning period's ended. That'll be more sensitive.
When Mitch returns.
So throw your comments down below.
We actually have comments?
There is a comment section, yes. It's very exciting. And we will see you all next time. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff. You know the drill. Bye.